Consider for a start just who the judges are who will rule in one of the most momentous matters ever to have come up in the US Supreme Court, and that's due next week now, whether Trump's tariffs are legal or not. And that verdict will make a critical difference to just about every country in the world, not least the US. And to no leader, certainly more than Trump, whose pet project these tariffs are, he's left no one in any doubt over that. On the face of it, and going by its report to a large extent, the Supreme Court in the US appears positioned in Trump's favor. 6 of the 9 judges are known to have conservative views who, for those perceived leanings, would be expected widely to back Trump. 3 of them have been appointed by Trump: Neil Gorsuch, Brett Kavanaugh, and Amy Coney Barrett. Chief Justice John Roberts was appointed by former Republican President George W. Bush, as were Clarence Thomas and Samuel Alito. The remaining 3 judges are known to have liberal views: Sonia Sotomayor and Elena Kagan, appointed by Barack Obama; Ketanji Brown Jackson, appointed by Joe Biden. But that may not mean necessarily a 6-3 verdict already in favor of Trump. Chief Justice Roberts has often taken an independent and even a liberal position on issues, and on this one, the majority would have to turn down a very firm decision that came in May from the US Court of International Trade in New York. That court blocked all tariffs invoked under the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, the IEEPA. A federal appeal court then upheld that decision in a 7-4 ruling. So that is the ruling now and reasoning of 2 courts that the Supreme Court would have to overturn. Trump is doing all he can to that end. He feels certainly much strengthened after winning a ruling earlier this year from this Supreme Court that limits the power of federal judges to block state policy.
The Supreme Court has delivered a monumental victory for the Constitution, the separation of powers, and the rule of law in striking down the excessive use of nationwide injunctions to interfere with the normal functioning of the executive branch. I want to thank Justice Barrett, who wrote the opinion brilliantly, as well as Chief Justice Roberts and Justices Alito, Gorsuch, Kavanaugh, and Thomas. Great people.
And Trump has been playing this upcoming decision as make or break for the US.
It's a very important decision, and frankly, if they make the wrong decision, it would be a devastation for our country. We have a big case coming up in the Supreme Court, and I will tell you, that's one of the most important cases in the history of our country. Because if we don't win that case, we will be a weakened, troubled, financial mess for many, many years to come. I don't even know if survivable is a good term. And if we do, we're going to be the most powerful economic country in the world.
The warnings often repeated are no doubt intended as public pressure upon the Supreme Court judges, and Trump has suggested that he might even go so far as to go and sit inside the Supreme Court when the tariffs case comes up. How's that for pressure?
That's why I think I'm going to go to the Supreme Court to watch it. I've not done that, and I had some pretty big cases. I think it's one of the most important cases ever brought.
So exactly what is the reasoning in the decisions taken by the Court of International Trade first and then of the Appeals Court that Trump is now asking the Supreme Court to turn down? Their first reason was that the president has limited powers to order tariffs on his own without expressly delegated authority from the US Congress that he does not have. 2, the court ruled that the IEEPA provided the president powers to deal with, as it says, an unusual and extraordinary threat, and that the tariffs are really a leverage ploy and not a response to any unusual or extraordinary threat to the US. 3, the court held that the invocation of trafficking in fentanyl by the Trump administration was just a front to apply these tariffs as the government chose, and not a credible reason for applying these tariffs. And finally, the IEEPA mandates uniformity in duties. The tariffs clearly are not uniform. Since then, there has been more for the Supreme Court to now consider. Trump has added 10% to Canadian tariffs because he did not like a video campaign ordered by the Premier of Ontario Province, Douglas Ford. That video quotes former President Ronald Reagan as speaking very firmly against tariffs. Trump says he will not only apply the 10%, he will now not meet Prime Minister Carney for a long time. So annoyed is he by that ad. So the Supreme Court would now have to consider that advertisement too an unusual and extraordinary threat to the US if it is to offer blanket backing to Trump on his tariffs policy, to really have to consider policy arising from personal annoyance and pique a legitimate exercise of presidential powers under the IEEPA. So that would be very much in the style of Kings, and 7 million Americans came out on the streets and they had something to say very vividly, very loudly, what they thought of this. So now, will the Supreme Court come down on Trump's side on the tariffs? That may well happen, but it's not yet a given.
Been fighting so long and so hard that they don't know what the they're doing.